let's cross. We crossed near the barracks, and he stepped out first, and then all he heard was a bang, turned around and noticed that I'd been struck by a vehicle. The bleeding was so severe it was forcing the brain down onto its stem.
Okay.
And so they had said to my family, look, our advice is we think you should consider switching off his life support because he's not responding.
You said no.
I was at the top of my game in the army, and I was doing very well. I just started working for a gentleman who was sort of the best soldier of his generation. I'd landed a job that was sort of known as the Kushti job for a trooper.
Okay.
And it was sort of given to one of the cleanest troopers who was able to organise himself. And it meant that I didn't have to ride the horses anymore.
Okay.
I turned this, it's a warrant officer out. So I looked after his kit.
Okay.
I made sure his shoes and his boots were always polished. So,
So
when
it's basically like you're becoming the apprentice, like he's moulding you for his role, kind of thing.
I guess, well, it's just an orderly, so he can do his job without worrying about the kit, and in return, I don't have to ride in the horse. And I'm sort of untouchable in the regiment because
You're his guy.
no one can dick me for shit jobs because he works for Quarter Major Island.
Okay.
And so I'm just floating around, and he sort of was this, I guess, the second male role model in my life, and I sort of looked up to him and thought, like, I can be more because of him if I sort of turn it up a level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I had to, because with him there was no room.
There's no shorts.
Like,
cuts.
there's nothing you do
this
properly.
level, or don't do it.
And you have to maintain it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like when I was doing my own kit, sometimes I could chin it off, or sometimes I could do it. Him, it had to be done to immaculate standards. And I think I was working for him for about 6 or 7 months. And then we ended up going to a boxing event at the Royal Albert Hall, which is down the road from the barracks. And I have no recollection, but I left with him, and he'd since said that we're walking down the road. He'd said, come on, let's cross. We crossed near the barracks, and he stepped out first, and then all he heard was a bang, turned around and noticed that I'd been struck by a vehicle and was now trapped beneath it.
This is on the main road?
Yeah, on the main road. Just a free, and bearing in mind I'm in army uniform with a big peaked cap. How the bloke didn't see me, I don't know.
That's
but
crazy.
I guess to this day, I still put it down to a freak accident. One of those things that was meant to be.
This is in Knightsbridge?
Yeah, in Knightsbridge. So this was in 2011.
Wow. And you know, I know the story because obviously I've researched into you, heard you give the story before. So this is where he actually saves your life.
Yeah, I mean he lifted the taxi enough so it could reverse back off of me. And then literally he'd done multiple tours, Afghanistan or Iraq, and so he knew how to save the life or what to do to keep someone alive.
Yeah.
What's his name, sorry?
Is Martin Island.
Big up Martin Island.
Yeah, man.
No, big him up because he kept you alive.
Literally.
Survival.
I think he remembers, he says to me that the first thing he noticed was that I was blood was coming from my nose, my eyes, my ears, my mouth.
Wow.
And he knew because of the blood from the ears
injury.
that it's a head injury, and so he sort of gently tapped my face thinking I'd sort of open my eyes, but that wasn't working, so then he slapped and nothing, and so he then and he himself had said that to this day he doesn't quite understand how things worked out the way he did, because once he had assessed his
situation.
He knew it was bad. He got a tap on the shoulder, and there happened to be a military doctor who was at the same event, who then come in and started helping him. And then
I'm getting goosebumps, you know.
And then the ambulance arrived, and they wanted to land an air ambulance, but it was where it would land was too far from where I was. And so the ambulance said that they'd resuscitate me into hospital. But then they got a military doctor, another military doctor, I think it was a special forces doctor, apparently, come in and said, no, I'll intubate him at the scene, which had placed me into a coma. So they done that, and then off I went to hospital in a coma, sort of. And Martin had said, as you've seen in the TED talk, that as far as he was concerned, there was no way he was going to see me again.
So was this what hospital? St Thomas's?
No, so I went to the Royal London in Whitechapel, which was a brain.
The special unit.
Brain injury. And I was in intensive care there for, I think, 3.5 weeks. And the doctors had tried their best, but had written me off. And what had essentially happened was the bleeding was so severe, it was forcing the brain down onto its stem.
Okay.
And so they had said to my family, look, our advice is we think you should consider switching off his life support because he's not responding.
Who said no?
I think it's fun. And this is the funny thing is there was an officer in my regiment called Major TA.
Okay.
He was my squadron leader, and he came in the ambulance to the hospital and then sort of moraled my family. And he had this. I think I may be wrong, but a Nigerian officer who then went on to be the Queen's equerry.
Wow.
And the bloke was.
Sorry, it wasn't equerry.
Equerry is like the Queen's right hand. He'd anything military or ceremonial, he'd shadow the Queen.
Okay.
And he the most unbelievable soldier. And my family had said that my mum at that point had dropped to her knees and sort of crying, thinking, what on earth? And he had grabbed her, picked her up, shook her and said, get a grip of yourself. He's a household cavalryman. He's going to fight this, and he's going to come back.
Big up Mr. T.
Like mad what he done, the morale, and I think this is where the army family sort of stepped in because they were constantly coming up to the hospital. I think my regiment they gave my family somewhere to live in London, so they all could live from one place.
Close to you.
They had a driver from my nan to ferry her to and from the hospital, and then they ferried my army mates up to see me, and they'd be in the hospital taking the piss out of me. Come on, you're taking the piss, David, wake up now. Or I'm going to go and take your sister for a date if you don't wake up. And then they said, okay, look, if you're not going to give us permission to turn the life support off, the only thing we can do is remove the right hand side of his skull. It's unlikely to survive a surgery, but there's nothing else we can do. Go in there, quickly say your goodbyes, we need to take him for surgery. My family aren't expecting me to come out of surgery. I can't imagine the pain they must have went through for that. But they'd done the surgery and I responded. And then they said, okay, we're going to try and bring him from the coma, but he's going to be in a vegetative state. The injury to his brain is so severe that the chance of him leading any form of a life is now impossible. And my family were happy with that. They just wanted me. And some might say, you could argue that that's selfish, but I sort of get it because they just wanted a version of me. They didn't care which one. But I woke up kicking and screaming. I was like,
tell them about that. I remember you saying, and you was like, bro, like about your hair.
So like one of the, I don't remember sort of the first 2 or 3 weeks after the coma. I remember nothing. But one of my first memories was someone showing me a mirror, and where they'd taken away the right hand side of my skull, it was like sort of dented in. And I was like, I didn't see that. I saw what they'd done to my hair. Especially in the army, and especially before the army, in the ends, you go to the barber, you make sure your hair is on point. It doesn't matter where you are. And I was, because it was an emergency operation, and they obviously thought they'd be taking me from there to a funeral home.
They didn't think much of it.
It didn't matter. They'll sort his hair out. They'd shaved one side of my head, and I was like, get a doctor, get the surgeon to come down now. And he come down, he was sort of like, David, what's wrong? And I was like, why have you only shaved one side of my head? Bring that set of clippers down here and get a nurse to sort my hair out. And I sort of don't, and then after that, the next thing I remember was I had a catheter in because I couldn't go to a toilet because I couldn't walk. I remember wrapping it around my arm, saying, if you don't take this out, I'm going to pull it out. Because I could see a toilet, and all I wanted to do was go to the toilet. I didn't comprehend that I couldn't walk.
It's not sinking in.
And they were saying you couldn't walk, and I was like, stand at the bottom of my bed, and I bet I can kick you. And they were like, no, you can move your legs. but you've been in bed for so long, and because of the brain injury, you're gonna have to learn to
to walk
walk.
again, yeah.
And I was like, that's fine, take this out, and I learned to walk right here.
Yeah.
So you go through physio. You go through
Well, and this
physio.
is the thing, because my skull was missing, they wouldn't give me physio in the hospital, and so I was getting mad frustrated. And so what I done was at night, when the nurse on the desk, the night nurse, used to fall asleep. And so what I do is I pull myself from my bed and hold on to the side of my bed, and sort of try and walk up and down the side of my bed, holding onto the rails. And I remember the first time I'd done it, I had legs like, you know when you hold a baby, put a baby on his feet and the legs are shaking? I was like that.
Wow.
And every night I'd done it to the point where I thought, okay, I can make it to that door. It was literally from here to, say, the drum kit.
Yeah.
And I remember the happiness, like I was like walking like Maggie from Simpsons. Like, but I had the biggest smile on my face, and I went into the toilet, used the toilet, and even though I was all over the place,
but you got to the top.
happy, and I come out I'd achieved something. The doctor, like, you tell me I can't walk, I can't go to the toilet.
No, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, so the African nurse was screaming and shouting, "What are you doing? You're gonna kill yourself!" Because there's nothing to protect the right hand side of my brain. So had I fallen over or hit my head, it'd have been over. And then she got Major TA to come back. You need to speak to him. He's not listening to us. And he was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "They won't let me do anything. I'm just cracking on.
Yeah.
I'm good. If they're not going to help me get better, I'm going to do it myself." And he was like, "Look, I get it. Just don't hurt yourself." And then I was moved from there to Headley Court Rehabilitation Centre in Surrey.
Is that through the army? Is that
So it's a military rehabilitation, and it's the place is unreal. Like they've got the best specialists, the best care. And I remember I went there and sat down with a group of specialists, and they were sort of like, "So what's wrong, David? How can we help?" And I was like, "There's nothing wrong. I'll be home for Christmas." Bearing in mind, this is like early. The accident was 7th of October, and then I went to Headley Court, I think the back end of November.
Okay.
And I was like, I'll be home for Christmas. There's nothing.
So
like, I was drowning in denial. And then I ended up, I sort of learnt to sort of take care of myself, feed myself, walk properly. I started exercising and running, and I guess into the best physical shape I'd ever been. But mentally, like everything, I started to notice that the things I could have done with my eyes closed before were now frustratingly difficult. Like I go into a shopping centre and it was like
too much. It was too much going on.
Yeah, and I could.
So did you lose your speech?
So when I woke up, the speech wasn't gone, but I was talking a lot of rubbish, and I think I was slurring initially for a period of time. So I had like speech therapy, occupational therapy, PT, physio, all these different things. And then they released me for Christmas, and they sort of said, "Okay, you need to stay."
It's the following year, yeah?
No, the same year.
Woo!
I
so
ended
you got
up
there in November, and then Christmas you was released.
They sort of sent me home and said,
Wait, do you believe in God?
I didn't believe in God, but maybe that's a conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
But
I just want to I think God had a plan for him. God had a plan for you, bro. Because these things is not normal.
And my girlfriend was the first person to sort of say that to me, and said it for a long time.
There you go.
But
big up Gemma.
Yes. Yeah. And so then they said, "Okay, you need to go home and stay home for 8 months, because in 8 months we'll rebuild your skull."
Okay. Yeah.
And so I had Christmas at home. I just wanted to be at home. Like, I was sick of hospitals. Yeah. I just wanted to be able to go to the toilet without a nurse shadowing me, or go into the fridge and grab some food. And
when it's feel like a man, innit?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. And then Christmas passed, and I remember then in the January, I was sort of like, I'm going to have to stay home until August.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, they were saying, like, don't leave the house because of your head. And I remember even sleeping at night, I used to always think to myself, what happens if I roll over? Or I used to be a bad sleepwalker. And so I used to think, I was scared.
Yeah.
And so
there was no shield or nothing?
Nothing, just skin.
No bandage though?
No, nothing.
That's the open wound.
Wait, what? They'd stitch it, but just skin.
Oh.
So imagine...
It was like a graft.
Imagine they cut down the centre of your head and then cut a hole in your skull and then stitch your skin back up, but
Okay.
Sags in.
Okay,
I
yeah,
think the
yeah.
picture. I think there's a picture. I think there's a picture of lads still.
Yeah, there's on his website.
And so I was, I guess, in fear, was like, I just need to get back to what I was doing before. As far as I was convinced, I'd had an accident.
And you're back.
I was fine. I had, okay, things weren't easy, but if I could get back to work, I'd build back that resilience and everything would be okay, and this would just pass. And I moved back into the barracks in mid-January.
Yeah.
And then just started going down to the medical officer saying, I need something to do. I want to come back to work. And he was like, you're insane. You shouldn't even be in the barracks. We're not insured to have people with half their head missing. And I was like, I can't stay at home.
Yeah.
And they eventually supported me, started giving me little things to do.
Yeah.
But it was then that I sort of, when I started to return to work, the impact of the brain injury on me, like I started to see it because the boss would say, can you tell me how many gloves are in that box? And I'd count it once, and halfway through I'd forget what number I was on.
Okay.
And then count it again, and it would happen, and I'd be like, okay, if it was once or twice, there's just an accident, but this is happening every time I'm counting, or people are asking me to do things and I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing, I started to suffer from anxiety in the evenings. And then initially I started to go and play the fruit machine in the barracks, bearing in mind I'd never gambled before this, but putting money into the fruit machine took that anxiety away from me.
It was a coping mechanism.
Yeah, and then that stopped working, and so I started going out partying and drinking. Bear in mind, with half my head missing.
Tolerance levels are lower right now.
Yeah, like I'd be out in Leicester Square with my friends with half my head missing.
Yeah.
And then dating with half my head missing, like living life with half my head missing.
Was you on medication?
None.
Sick man.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like-
Like he was like, forget that meds. I don't need him.
They had me on anti-seizure medication
Okay.
because I was seizuring in the coma.
Okay.
And I remember in Headley Court, I've always not been anti-medication, but always thought I never liked swallowing tablets.
Yeah. I don't even like paracetamol now.
And so I refused to take it, and they said, you need to because it's going to stop you having seizures. And at the time I was, on reflection, you know, if a specialist tells you need to take something, you need to take it. I thankfully never had a seizure, touch wood, and that still is the case today. But I was just back thriving, I guess, in life, even though the brain injury was causing a lot of problems. The army selected me to march Great Britain flag out at the Olympic ceremony, which was a huge success, and sort of a sign for me that I'm doing the right thing.
So wait, hold on. This accident, your injury occurred in 2011.
End of 2011.
And then 2012 Olympics.
August 2012. And
down
down
the road. Yeah.
I remember just before the opening ceremony, I had the skull reconstructed.
Wow.
And the anxiety and the depression, I started waking up. And I didn't know it was depression at the time. And so I got sent back to Headley Court for sort of psychological treatment. And it just went in one ear and out of the other. Because I didn't realise I was depressed or anxious. So I didn't understand why I was speaking to these people.
You was like, what am I doing here? Like, you didn't get it.
No, and I knew that there was something wrong, but I didn't know what.
Okay.
I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I was sent back to the barracks, and the medical officer said, look, you can stay in the army, but because of your brain injury, you're going to be undeployable for your career, which means
but you can't be an active.
You can't go on active service. You can't deploy on exercises. You know, I couldn't do adventure training. Lots of things, and I was like, I can't stay in the army with sort of one hand tied behind my back. It's going to make me unhappy. And so and credit to him, because he had said to me, you can be so much more outside. Start thinking about what you can be outside of the army. And then in 2015, I was medically discharged.
Okay.
And then it was sort of the depression and anxiety. Suddenly, I couldn't run from it anymore.
It was overwhelming then.
It got to the point where I was drinking so heavily on nights out. I went out with my friends, and my sister was there with some of her friends. And I drunk so much that I'd forgotten who my sister and her friends were.
Wow.
Like, it was recounted to her that she was saying, David, it's me, you're Chelsea, your sister. And I was like, you're not my sister. What are you talking about? And when I woke up the next day, and she told that to me, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what? I'm gonna kill myself.
Wow.
Using alcohol.
Yeah.
And at this time, like, I was having suicidal thoughts, but I didn't realize they were suicide. It was just normal to me. Like, I'd imagine, like, I'd be watching TV and imagine myself hanging from my wardrobe and would just say, oh, what are you thinking crazy stuff for? Carry on watching EastEnders or carry on playing the computer. And it was, I'd had a conversation with someone about these thoughts and they were like, it's not normal. Go and get some help. Yeah. And this was where...
I rate that person, whoever that was, big up that person, you know. Big up, really.
This was where sort of, I guess the real turning point was for me in my life. You would think it would be the accident and the injury and losing my career, but actually I wasn't my lowest until, God bless my nan. I was living at my nan's in a bedroom, sort of struggling to sleep, using alcohol on the weekends to get through the weekend, going to work in the Monday to Friday, putting on a brave face like everything was okay, when actually I'd get home and I was an absolute, I'd lock myself in my room, an absolute mess.
So it's spiraling then.
Yeah, and as soon as I realised that the suicidal thoughts weren't normal, then I was like scared in a similar way that I was when I joined the army, scared that it was going to go wrong, because I thought the brain is so powerful that it can convince me that these thoughts are normal.
Yeah.
And it's starting to convince me to start experimenting. So like my bathrobe belt, whenever I put my bathrobe on, my brain would say, take your belt and just tie a knot, just see what it'd look like.
Wow.
And I would be standing in my bathroom doing it, sometimes like for 20 minutes.
Wow.
And then I'd sort of snap out of it and go, what on earth are you doing, you idiot?
Yeah.
Put your bathrobe on.
Yeah.
But when I realised it wasn't normal, I could remember all of that, and I was like, fuck, I'm going to take my own life. I need help.
Wow.
And I went to see my GP, and she sort of said, I don't think it's that serious. Here's a leaflet. If you feel like you're going to hurt yourself, call this number. And I remember standing outside the GP's saying to myself, putting the leaflet in the bin and thinking, I have no control over this. If my brain decides it wants me to kill myself, there's nothing I can do. I realised the power
of the mind.
That once you push, and bearing in mind it was my fault, because aside from the brain injury, I was asking more from my brain than it could give
at the time.
And so is there any surprise that it went in self-destruct mode? And this is when I started working with a neuropsychologist, and I won't go into the whole story, but check out my TED talk where I speak about how gratitude and daily reflection saved my life.
I wanted to touch on that because I remember in that TED talk you used to write down things you was grateful for, and I remember one instance. I know we're going a bit off topic, but I remember one instance you would give up your seat on the tube for someone.
Yeah.
You know, those small little things that you used to do, like just to be a nice person or spread a bit of kindness, and you used to reflect on that. That kind of got you out of that state, or kind of give you not a purpose, but it gave you like a renewed energy, in a sense.
I guess it did. It sort of rebuilt me, because when I went to see the psychologist, I was depressed. I was rolling in anxiety. I couldn't sleep. Most people would have just medicated me.
Yeah, they would have just put you on the
And thank God that he didn't, because he had said, I want you to keep one of the things was I want you to keep a diary. He also said, you need to stop working full time. You work Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays, 8:30 till 12. But the journaling was like every day I'd wake up, and because I was in such a bad place, I was making so many mistakes, and then I'd be critical of myself, which is what a lot of people do now in life, especially in today's society, era, where it's so hard.
So much pressure on yourself.
Did you do any coursework to sort of like stabilization, resilience?
None.
Oh, so you just pull straight through without any coursework. Pull through, like, so you come back to normality.
Well, I guess I was seeing the psychologist twice a week for maybe six months to a year initially. And he had said, write this diary. And what it gave me the opportunity to do was at the end of the day, look at why did I forget my keys in the morning? Why did I miss that train? Why did I get so frustrated that I threw my dinner across the kitchen when I was trying to cook it? Why, when I go shopping, am I getting so frustrated? And what can I do differently to maybe lessen?
Okay, those frustrations. Yeah.
And so as I started to write, well, you know, I woke today feeling tired and sad, but this was because I wasn't sleeping. It suddenly gave me a reason to feel that way.
You identified the root cause.
Yeah, and that didn't take away the fact that I was tired and sad, but it made me go, well, that's because you didn't sleep, so that's okay.
Yeah.
And I couldn't change everything, but there was lots of little things, and what happened each day was that I started to grow. I compared myself only to the person I was yesterday, and that gave me the chance to, even if I could grow 1%,
you're moving forward. It's progress.
that's progress.
Yeah.
And so keys, for example, I'd say, well, I forgot my keys this morning. Tonight I need to put my keys in my jacket pocket. So that there's no way I can forget them. Or I need to put all of the clothes I'm going to wear in one place. And a lot of this had been taught to us in the army, and it was almost like I'd forgotten it. And so I just started using like these organizational skills to sort of put some order back into my life. And over the course of, and the point on, once you've written about your day, you then pick 3 things to be grateful for, 3 things that were nice about your day, and 3 good deeds that you had done. And I was probably the most ungrateful person. You know, like I didn't do any good deeds. Like I was a pretty sort of selfish, self-centered guy before I'd started working with the psychologist. I wasn't a horrible guy, but I was still although I had changed, I had evolved from the person I was still very much him. Grey, self-centered. It's about me, I've got to survive. Forget everyone else.
But that's like survival mode though. You've gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot of trauma growing up. Survived that. You've gone through your adolescence. Survived that. All the roads and the parties and that kind of lifestyle. You survived that. Gone into the army. Survived that. Come out. Got done your ceremony. Now you're in the army. Gotten through the horrible injury. Life-changing injury. Come through that. Survived that. And now you're still here. You're a survivor, bro.
And this is the one, like, I attribute to, like, moving. I thank Brent Council for making us move home so many times.
That built that resilience.
Because it built that resilience to, you know, I'd become this social chameleon where I'd go home to see friends on a weekend and I'd be like them, but I'd go back to the regiment and I'd be all this pomp and pageantry and I'd speak posh and so I just started the journaling, starting to pick, to say, well, what am I grateful for today? And like I'd ask you now, watching this podcast, pick 3 things you could be grateful for today. And it seems like a difficult thing to do, but actually we could be grateful for the clothes we're wearing.
I was about to say, I'm happy I got a new jacket. Grateful for that. It keeps me warm. Had some good food today.
The things we take for granted every single day.
Yeah, literally easy.
But also then the good we do. And so what we don't do as humans is remind ourselves every day of the good we do and the impact that starts to have on you. It's like, you know, like some people, some women, some men, if I see a baby on TV, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
It makes a part of me. I don't know what part of me, but it makes a part of me happy. It feels warm.
Yeah.
Reminding yourself of the good you do every day it rewards a part of your brain that you're not even aware of. And so over the course of 30 days, and the psychologist had said, journal for 30 days and you'll see the impact of this. It started to change. Not only was I becoming better as every day passed, I was starting to do good for others because, you know, on day 10, I'm like, okay, again, I've held a door open for someone. I've asked someone how they are and wished them a good morning and hope they had a nice weekend. Or I've given up my seat on a train. You need to then I need to do different ones, but what other good deeds can I do? So life became about How can I do good for others?
Mm.
How can I help others?
Yeah.
And a byproduct of that was people wanting to do good for me.
Okay.
And happiness. Because, like, going into a coffee shop and saying to the woman, she's wearing a name tag, "Morning, Lisa, how are you?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Excuse me?"
How do you know my name?
I'm like, "You're wearing a name tag." And I'm like, "How was your weekend?" And
Yeah.
she's like, "Thank you so much." Like, she smiled, "Thank you so much." It's like rewarding
Yeah,
that part
yeah.
of me that...
Yeah.
And also making her day a little bit better.
Never I tweeted the other day, but I'd say this: never underestimate the power of just a good morning, or smile. How you doing? You alright?
And some
you know
people,
what I mean? Never underestimate that.
some people look at me like I'm weird, and I'm
You're
like,
bro, I'm on underground. I get the underground to work. Yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years now. But there's some miserable people. You smile at someone like, "Good morning," they think, "Oh, weirdo."
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Like you're
That's-
meant to be
like,
upset or
like,
something.
what's wrong? Like,
Yeah,
I'm just
totally.
saying good morning. So now I'm just like, unless you make eye contact with me, I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna think I'm weird. Hello, you're right. You know what I'm saying?
I've written in the book that nothing draws more attention than giving up your seat on a packed underground train to someone who doesn't look like they need it.
Yeah.
So someone drinking a coffee or
Yeah.
reading a book or trying to do their makeup.
Yeah.
And this is just by fluke of this journaling exercise. This started to happen, and it like I remember watching The Secret. Is that the law of attraction film?
Yeah.
When I was young and always thinking, how on earth do you apply this in life?
I hear that.
But what I was doing, I was starting to attract because I'd go into coffee shops, and because I'd speak to the woman, she'd say, "Coffee's on us," or "Lunch is on us," or
Oh, don't worry about that. We got you.
or people would start to do good for me because it was almost like they knew I would do good for them, even though they didn't know me.
And there's a saying that I've been told is and what is the reward for good except good? Like, so what's the reward of doing good except goodness? Do you know what I'm saying?
And like
so,
energy